There is a clock ticking in the Middle East right now, and the entire world is listening for it. A deadline has been set. The United States has given Iran a narrow window, just days, to come to the table and reach a deal. Not a framework, not a statement of intent, a real, verifiable agreement. And if that deal doesn't materialize, the message from Washington is unmistakably clear. Military action could resume. That is not speculation. That is a direct warning from the highest levels of the American government. Tonight, we break down exactly where things stand, what's really happening on the ground, and what the next 72 hours could mean for the entire world. President Trump has said he's receiving what he describes as pretty good news out of the negotiations, and on the surface, there are reasons for cautious optimism. But in the very same breath, the president is also signaling that American patience has a hard limit. Washington is not waiting indefinitely. The US has made its position clear. Negotiate seriously, reach an agreement, or face the consequences. That dual message, progress on one hand, ultimatum on the other, defines exactly where this crisis sits right now, balanced on a knife's edge. At the center of everything, as it has been from the beginning, is the Strait of Hormuz. Iran recently announced that the strait is open for global shipping, and that announcement moved markets immediately. Oil prices eased, investor anxiety dropped a few degrees, and for a brief moment it looked like the worst-case scenario had been pulled back from the brink. But here's what that headline didn't tell you. The United States has not lifted its naval blockade, not by a single ship. American naval assets remain in position, specifically targeting Iranian ports and oil export infrastructure. So while the broader global shipping lanes may be technically accessible, Iran itself remains under one of the most aggressive economic constraints it has faced in years. The numbers tell the story clearly. Reports indicate that at least 20 vessels, and potentially more, have already been turned back under the US naval presence. 20 ships, each one representing oil that didn't reach a buyer, revenue that didn't reach Tehran, and economic pressure that compounds with every passing day. Iran's government depends on oil exports the way most governments depend on tax revenue. It is the lifeblood of the state, and right now that lifeblood is being methodically restricted. That pressure appears to be producing results, at least on the surface. There are credible reports that Iran has signaled a willingness to negotiate on issues that it has historically treated as absolute red lines. According to statements coming out of Washington, Iran may have agreed in principle to suspend uranium enrichment, surrender certain nuclear materials, and reduce its financial and operational support for militant groups operating across the region. If those reports are accurate, and that is a significant if, this would represent one of the most dramatic diplomatic shifts in the Middle East in a generation. The kind of shift that, just 6 months ago, most analysts would have called impossible. But this is where we have to be disciplined and precise, because the picture is not clean. Even as these signals emerge, contradictory reports are also surfacing. There are indications that Iranian forces may still be attempting to assert influence over portions of the Strait of Hormuz, warning vessels, redirecting traffic, testing the boundaries of what the current standoff will allow. That gap between the official statement that the strait is open and the operational reality on the water is exactly the kind of ambiguity that makes the situation so dangerous. In a crisis like this, ambiguity is not neutral. Ambiguity is a spark, a misread signal, a captain who doesn't receive the right message, a naval commander who interprets a vessel's movement as a provocation. Any of these can unravel weeks of diplomatic progress in a matter of hours. The margin for error here is not just thin, it is almost non-existent. And that reality hangs over every conversation happening in back channels and negotiating rooms right now. There is another dimension to this story that demands attention, and it goes beyond Iran, beyond the strait, beyond the immediate standoff. It goes to the question of what this crisis is revealing about the structure of global alliances. President Trump has openly criticized NATO's response to the escalation, suggesting that when the situation reached its most dangerous point, support from traditional allies arrived far too slowly. That criticism carries weight because it points to a deeper fracture. For decades, the foundational promise of NATO has been collective defense. An attack on one is an attack on all. But in this conflict, the United States has largely operated alone. That's not an accident, it's a signal. It suggests that we may be entering a new era of global power dynamics, one where traditional alliance structures are being tested, strained, and in some cases quietly set aside. The implications of that shift extend far beyond this crisis and will shape international security policy for years to come. Meanwhile, in the Middle East itself, the regional alignment is also evolving. Gulf states, Saudi Arabia, the UAE, and others have moved into closer coordination with the United States in response to Iranian actions. That represents a meaningful shift in a region historically defined by complex, sometimes contradictory relationships. A more unified Gulf front, operating in alignment with US strategic interests, changes the calculus for Tehran in ways that sanctions and blockades alone cannot. It signals to Iran's leadership that the region is not on its side, and that isolation, if the current path continues, will only deepen. So let's answer the question directly. Are we close to the end of this conflict? Not yet. There are genuine signs of movement. Negotiations are active. Economic pressure is forcing concessions, or at least the appearance of concessions. Key shipping routes have stabilized, but none of the core issues have been resolved. There is no finalized deal. The blockade is fully operational. Military assets remain deployed and ready, and the trust deficit between Washington and Tehran, built up over decades of confrontation, betrayal, and broken agreements, does not dissolve in a matter of days. What we have right now is a pause. A fragile, pressurized, potentially temporary pause. The coming days will determine everything. If negotiations produce a real, verifiable agreement, one with teeth, with inspection mechanisms, with consequences for non-compliance, this moment could become a genuine turning point. See, the kind of breakthrough that reorders the Middle East security architecture and delivers lasting stability to a region that has known very little of it. But if the talks collapse, if Iran decides the cost of concession is too high, or if Washington decides the offers on the table aren't enough, what comes next will be faster, harder, and significantly more dangerous than what we've already seen. Both sides know this, and that mutual awareness is perhaps the only thing keeping the conversation alive. Here is what this moment means, not just for the United States and Iran, but for every nation that fills its gas tanks, powers its factories, and trades on global markets. The Strait of Hormuz is not a regional issue, it is a global pressure point. And how this crisis resolves, or fails to resolve, will send a message about the durability of American power, the future of multilateral diplomacy, and the willingness of adversarial nations to choose negotiation over escalation. The stakes are that large, the timeline is that short, and the outcome is still genuinely uncertain. We will continue to track every development in this story and bring you the most accurate reporting as it unfolds. I'm Anchor Name. Stay with us.